At Kuala Lumpur Airport in Malaysia today, the weather is quite calm. The year is 2014, the date is March 7th, and the time is 11:11 p.m. Fuel is being loaded into Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, cargo and food are being stored, and passengers are taking their seats one by one. None of the 227 passengers boarding this flight have the slightest idea that in the next few hours, an incident will occur that will go down in history as one of the greatest aviation mysteries. There are total 227 passengers, also 2 infants among the passengers. Besides these passengers, there are 12 crew members, including 10 flight attendants and 2 pilots. A total of 239 people are on board as the flight begins taxiing towards the runway. It is now 12:31 a.m., and a new day, March 8th, has begun.
Delivery Malaysia 370, good morning.
Malaysia 370, request level.
370, we are ready, requesting flight level 350 to Beijing.
The voice you just heard belongs to the first officer, Farik Abdul Hamid. He is just 27 years old, and today's flight is his last training flight. After this flight, he is due for promotion. Sitting beside him is his senior, Captain Zaharie Ahmad Shah, who is twice his age, 53 years old. With 18,000 flying hours of experience, he is an extremely skilled pilot. Keep a close eye on this man, for he is about to blow your mind. Notice that Flight MH370 is heading toward runway 32 for takeoff. According to Malaysian Airlines procedures, it is the senior captain's responsibility to taxi the flight to the runway, while the junior first officer, Hamid, handles the radio communications. Once the flight takes off, their roles will reverse. Hamid will pilot the plane to Beijing, while Captain Zaharie will manage the radio and guide him. Finally, at 12:41 a.m., Captain Zaharie pushes the thrust levers, and the flight takes off. As per procedure, Captain Zaharie hands over the responsibility of flying the plane to his junior, first officer Hamid. This massive aircraft has now broken its connection with the ground and is climbing into the deep, dark night, aiming to reach an altitude of 35,000 feet. Most of the passengers on board are settling in for sleep, thinking that for the next 6 hours until they reach Beijing, no one will disturb them. Little do they know that within just a short while, Captain Zaharie will begin executing his plan. Shortly after takeoff, Captain Zaharie contacts departure control.
Malaysia 370.
Malaysia 370, selamat pagi. Identify climb flight level 180, it's an ascent direct to Ikari.
Okay, level 180 direct Ikari, Malaysian 370.
Just now, you heard Captain Zaharie repeatedly using the term Igari. To understand what a Igari is, think of it as an imaginary intersection in the sky, similar to a street intersection in your neighborhood. When someone asks for directions, you might say, "Take a left at the intersection, and the school will be right in front of you." Similarly, aircraft navigate their routes based on waypoints that guide them toward their destination. The waypoint Igari is just another normal waypoint, but it is counted among the rare waypoints in the world because it lies at the borders of 5 different countries' airspaces: Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Singapore. At 12:46 a.m., Flight MH370 reaches an altitude of 35,000 feet, and as per protocol, Captain Zaharie provides a routine report to ATC. The strange thing is that just 6 minutes later, Captain Zaharie repeats the same report to ATC again. No one knows why. Take note that whenever I mention ATC, I am referring to the Air Traffic Control Tower, where professionals stay in constant contact with flights and guide them. So far, everything on this flight seems completely normal. Most passengers are asleep. Those who are awake are being served meals by the cabin crew, and both pilots are performing their duties as usual. But inside Captain Zaharie's mind, something sinister is brewing. 38 minutes after takeoff, the flight is approaching the Igari waypoint. At this moment, Malaysian ATC instructs the pilots to establish contact with Ho Chi Minh ATC.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9, good night. Good night, Malaysian 370.
Malaysian ATC said this because the flight was about to leave Malaysian airspace and enter Vietnamese airspace via the Igri waypoint. This is Vietnam, and this is Ho Chi Minh City, a major city in the country. Malaysian ATC told the pilots to contact Ho Chi Minh ATC for further navigation. As soon as Captain Zaharie bids good night to Malaysian ATC, he does something that remains a mystery to this day. Instead of contacting Ho Chi Minh ATC, Captain Zaharie turns to First Officer Hamid and asks him to step out of the cockpit and bring 2 cups of coffee. Normally, serving coffee or water to the pilots is the responsibility of the cabin crew. But obviously, as an experienced and senior pilot, Captain Hamid had no reason to argue with his senior. Hamid, being on his last training flight, saw no reason to question his superior's request. First Officer Hamid steps out of the cockpit to get coffee, and the bulletproof cockpit door locks behind him. At this moment, complete control of the flight is now in the hands of just one man, Captain Zaharie Ahmad Shah. Captain Zaharie knew that this was his perfect opportunity to make MH370 disappear from the world, because at this very moment, he was in a kind of no man's land. Malaysian ATC had handed over the flight to Vietnamese ATC, but Vietnamese ATC had not yet established contact with it. In short, at this moment, no one on the ground was expecting to hear from MH370. No one's eyes were on it. Taking full advantage of the moment, Captain Zaharie does the first thing necessary. He turns off the aircraft's transponder at the Igri waypoint. This is ATC, and this is a plane. Almost every flight is equipped with transponders that allow ATC to see details about the plane on their radar screens, such as altitude, position, and unique ID. The transponder works with a ground-based radar system, helping ATC maintain safe distances between aircraft. Captain Zaharie, having disabled the transponder, now moves to his next step. Being an experienced pilot, he knew that merely switching off the transponder would not make the plane disappear entirely. The Malaysian Airlines Flight MH370 also had ACARS, Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System technology. ACARS automatically sends reports related to fuel status, maintenance, and position every 30 minutes to a satellite, which then transmits the data to Malaysian Airlines on the ground. To ensure that even Malaysian Airlines could not track the flight, Captain Zaharie shut down the ACARS system as well. To take it a step further, he also turned off all external lights of the aircraft. He did all this within a minute. If we look at the flight path, this specific location at the Igri waypoint was the pinpoint moment when flight MH370 disappeared from the outside world. 4 ground-based ATC, military personnel, and even civilians tracking flights, establishing any form of contact with MH370 became impossible. Captain Zaharie had successfully made the plane invisible from conventional tracking systems. However, he still had one major challenge ahead. Besides himself, there were 238 other people on board who were expecting to land in Beijing. The biggest immediate threat to his plan was First Officer Hamid, who was about to return with coffee and re-enter the cockpit. Being an experienced pilot, Captain Zaharie had already anticipated this challenge and knew exactly what to do. He opened both outflow valves beneath the aircraft, allowing the compressed air that was keeping all 238 passengers alive to escape from the plane. As a result, a severe drop in oxygen levels occurred inside the cabin. Emergency oxygen masks deployed, and passengers instinctively grabbed them, trying to breathe. However, First Officer Hamid was not seated at the time. He was standing in the galley. In such a scenario, his only survival option was a portable oxygen cylinder. Just moments after passengers experienced this rapid decompression, those who were asleep suddenly woke up in shock. As they struggled to process what was happening, Captain Zaharie, out of nowhere, executed a steep 38-degree U-turn. This was completely unplanned. If we look at the flight map, MH370 was expected to continue straight toward Beijing via Igri and Bitad waypoints. However, between Igri and Bitad, Captain Zaharie suddenly changed course. As the aircraft made this abrupt maneuver, First Officer Hamid lost his balance, hit his head against the interior, and collapsed. At this point, Hamid still had no idea about Zaharie's intentions. His only thought was to get back into the cockpit and help stabilize the aircraft, assuming that something had gone wrong with Zaharie. Hamid rushed toward the cockpit door and called the captain from the intercom. The call rang, but no one picked up. He tried again, still no response. Now, Hamid started getting suspicious. Thinking that Zaharie might have lost consciousness, he attempted to unlock the cockpit door using a secret code. However, this security door had been designed with hijack scenarios in mind. It wouldn't open unless the person inside deliberately allowed it. When Hamid entered the code, the door should have unlocked, but instead, the light on the keypad turned red. Captain Zaharie had manually switched the door lock to deny. Hamid was in disbelief. He re-entered the code, hoping it was an error. Once again, the system denied entry. This was the moment Hamid realized something was very wrong. He pounded on the cockpit door, shouting for Zaharie to open up, but there was no response. Panic spread among the passengers, who were already struggling to breathe due to the loss of oxygen. Meanwhile, Zaharie focused on his next challenge, crossing Malaysian airspace undetected. He was now heading toward the Strait of Malacca, but his biggest concern was avoiding detection by military radar. He knew that while switching off transponders and ACARs would keep him hidden from civilian ATC, military primary radars could still detect the aircraft's presence. To avoid interception, Zaharie cleverly positioned the flight along the boundary between Thai and Malaysian airspace. He calculated that the Thai military would assume it was a Malaysian aircraft, and vice versa. This confusion would allow him to continue flying undetected. As he executed this maneuver, the Vietnamese Ho Chi Minh ATC realized something was wrong. They were expecting MH370, but it never arrived. The Vietnamese controllers attempted to contact the flight multiple times, but there was no response. After 20 minutes of failed attempts, they informed Kuala Lumpur ATC that they had lost contact. By now, Kuala Lumpur ATC was also confused. The protocol stated that if a flight was not received within 5 minutes, the transferring ATC should be notified immediately. However, the Vietnamese ATC had taken 20 minutes to do so. This delay gave Zaharie enough time to cross into the Strait of Malacca. Meanwhile, First Officer Hamid was still outside the cockpit, desperately trying to get in. He knew something was off. As the aircraft continued its deviation, the passengers were in a state of semi-consciousness due to oxygen deprivation. Captain Zaharie had successfully passed over Penang Island, his hometown. At this point, Zaharie had two options: head straight into Indonesian airspace, which would alert their military radars, or take a right turn over the Malacca Strait, staying away from heavily monitored areas. He chose the latter. He continued flying toward the Indian Ocean. Now, he had another concern: making sure the aircraft would never be found. His plan was to let the aircraft fly until it ran out of fuel, crashing into the remote waters of the southern Indian Ocean, where search efforts would be extremely difficult. At 8:19 a.m., the aircraft's auxiliary power unit, APU, turned on as fuel ran out, triggering one final ping to the Inmarsat satellite. This was the last known communication from MH370 before it disappeared forever. After extensive searches, debris from MH370 was eventually found on various shores, but the main wreckage and the bodies of 239 people on board were never recovered. The mystery remains unsolved to this day. Did Captain Zaharie do this intentionally? Some evidence suggests he did, such as a flight simulator found in his home that had a similar flight path ending in the Indian Ocean. Additionally, he was a known supporter of opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim, who was jailed just a day before the flight took off. Some believe Zaharie was politically motivated to carry out this act. However, to this day, no one knows exactly what happened that night. An entire aircraft, 239 people, and millions of dollars spent on search efforts. And yet, no conclusive answers. Somewhere, someone knows the truth. But for reasons unknown, they remain silent. And that is what makes this one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time. If you want to know another aviation mystery, click here. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Miracle Times for more stories like this.